There are some people who cannot be told. They have to leave. They have to break from the thing that held them. Not because it was cruel, but because it was not enough for the storm inside them. The son stood in the shadow of his father's house and looked at stability as though it were a prison. The walls were sound. The table was full. The path was clear. But to him, it all felt too small, too known, too quiet. So he asked for what was not yet his. Inheritance before death, reward before wisdom, freedom before maturity. And the father let him have it. That is the part people miss. Sometimes judgment begins not when heaven stops you, but when it lets you go. So the son left, and the world opened its mouth. At first, it was everything he had imagined. Noise, lights, bodies, pleasure, choice, without restraint. A new name in a far country. No father's gaze, no memory, no duty, only appetite. And he spent. He spent like many do now. Spent money, spent truth, spent restraint, spent identity, spent years, spent himself. That is the way of the modern heart. It calls waste, experience. It calls rebellion, self-discovery. It calls exile, freedom. And for a while, it almost believes it. But eventually the music thins. The faces change, the money goes, the laughter hardens. And what once looked like power reveals itself as dependency. Then came famine, not just in the land, but in the man. Because famine is what follows a life built on appetite. When there is nothing left to consume, you finally meet yourself. And often, there is less there than you thought. So the son fell lower, lower than he imagined possible. A man once seated at his father's table, now feeding swine, starving among filth, reduced to longing for what even the animals had. This is where pride begins to die. Not in the spotlight, not in the speech, but in the silence where a man sees clearly what his hunger has made of him. Then came the turning. Not triumph, not dignity, just clarity. He remembered home, not as a child remembers comfort, but as the ruined remember truth. He remembered bread, order, covering, a father he had treated as already dead. And so he rose. That is the miracle. Not that he was strong, but that, in the ashes of himself, he still rose. He walked home with no demands left, no speeches of greatness, no claims to freedom, only the broken sentence of a man who now understood his place. I am no longer worthy. And yet while he was still far off, his father saw him. Not with coldness, not with calculation, not with the measured stare of a judge waiting to be satisfied, but with compassion that ran to the son who had wasted everything, to the son who had dragged the family name through the dust, to the son who came back with nothing but breath and repentance. That is the scandal of the story. Not merely that the son returned, but that mercy was waiting before his apology was finished. And still, there was another son. One who never left. One who stayed near the field, near the duty, near the house. Yet his heart was farther away than he knew. For when grace fell on the ruined, bitterness rose in the obedient. So here's the sting for people now. One son was lost in reckless freedom. The other was lost in quiet pride. One drowned in desire, the other in resentment. Both were estranged. Both needed the father, because this story is not only about a rebel coming home. It is about the many ways a soul can leave. Some leave through lust, some through ego, some through image, some through success. Some never walk out the door at all, yet their hearts become iron in the very house of God. The prodigal son is modern because people still do the same. They demand life early, burn through what was given. Coal ruin freedom, and then wonder why the far country feels empty. But the story remains. A man can waste years. He can bury himself in appetite, pride, noise, and delusion. He can become thin in spirit and sick with distance. And still, if he turns, home is there. Not because he earned it, but because mercy was always greater than the famine.